the itch.
Hello and welcome to LBC Irregulars, a Sherlock Holmes podcast radio episode brought to you by the LONGBOX CRUSADE. This is episode 15 of the radio show series. On this episode, we will listen to The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, The Eyes of Mr. Leyton, Season 6, Episode 4. It aired September 24th, 1945, featured Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce. I want to give a thanks to the Arthur Conan Doyle Encyclopedia website. They keep me straight on all these numberings of seasons and whatnot. Now, after we listen to the show, my guests and I will discuss our thoughts on it. We invite you to be part of that conversation. You can leave us a voicemail with your thoughts at 707-532-5269. That's 707-532-LBOX. Or you can comment on the show at LONGBOX CRUSADE, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Or you go old school and contact us with email, contact@longboxcrusade.com. Your comments might just get played on a future episode. Now it's time for the show. Let us dim the lights and travel back in our minds to a London of the past, through the chilled and foggy streets of London to 221B Baker Street.
This episode from the life of Sherlock Holmes will be transmitted to our men and women overseas by shortwave and through the worldwide facilities of the Armed Forces Radio Service. Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invites you to listen to Dr. Watson tell us another exciting story about his good friend, that master detective, Sherlock Holmes. And I'd like to tell you something that maybe you already know. The fact that America's favorite wine is port wine. Did you know that? If you didn't, you'll know why port is the way out front favorite if you'll just sample some Petri California port. You just look at that Petri port and you know it's good. That wonderful, deep, rich red color. And Petri port is so clear. Just hold it to the light and you can sort of see right through the glass. But what you want to know really about a wine is how does it taste? And I'll tell you something. I've never yet been able to find the adjective that'll do Petri port justice. It's wonderful, honest. You've just got to taste it for yourself and find out for yourself. You'll love that Petri port in the evening after dinner when you're sitting around listening to the radio. And it's perfect to serve your friends when they come over. You can show them that Petri label, too. In fact, you can show it proudly. Because the name Petri is the proudest name in the history of American wines. And now for our weekly doctor's visit. Let's see.
No, Mr. Bartell. Don't say, let's see if he's expecting us. You know I always expect you at this time on Monday evenings, my boy. So draw up your usual chair and settle down.
Thanks, Doctor.
Ah, that's it.
All alone this evening, Doctor? Where are the puppies?
Out on the patio. They had a most unfortunate encounter with a dead seal on the beach this afternoon. In consequence, they're a little malodorous, shall we say.
In that case, Doctor, perhaps we'd better change the subject. So, suppose I ask you about tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure.
Well, my boy, as I told you last week, the story took place in the foul alleyways of Limehouse. It was there on a foggy December evening in 1890 that my story began. An old friend and patient of mine, Isa Whitney, had disappeared, and his distraught wife had come to me for help. Knowing the man to be the victim of the shocking habit of taking opium, I suspected that I might find him in one of the vile dens inhabited by the dregs of the waterfront. And so, Mr. Bartell, about 5 o'clock on that December evening, I began my search. After an hour of fruitless wanderings, I found myself in a vile alley called Upper Swandam Lane. I could hear the distant moans of the riverboats as I walked, eyes alert, and hand on the revolver in my coat pocket. Suddenly, I saw a steep flight of steps leading down to a black gap, like the mouth of a cave. I walked down them. The steps were worn hollow in the center by the ceaseless tread of stumbling feet. I reached the bottom. A door faced me, and above it, a flickering oil lamp winked warnings at me. I found the latch and lifted it. The door squeaked open protestingly. And I entered. There was a tinkle of Chinese wind bells as I walked towards a long, low room. A strange sight met my eyes. Through the gloom, thick and heavy with the brown opium smoke, I saw that the room was terraced with wooden berths, like the forecastle of an elegant ship. Out of the shadows, there glimmered little red circles of light, now bright, now faint, as the burning poison waxed or waned in the metal pipes. Bodies lay in strange, fantastic poses. Bowed shoulders, bent knees, heads thrown back. The attendant came up to me with a pipe and beckoned me to an empty berth. I haven't come here to smoke your filthy drug. I'm looking for a friend, Mr. Isa Whitney.
No, Mr. Whitney here.
Oh, I'm going to search the place.
You must not disturb the place.
I'm carrying a revolver, so you'd better not argue with me, my good man. Out of the way. I searched that filthy den, but found no trace of my missing friend. As I was leaving in despair, a long shaking hand reached out and plucked at my sleeve. I turned, and there sprawled in a berth was the wreckage of a man, his gaunt face yellow and twitching, his clothes filthy and ragged, and the pupil of his eyes pinpoints. He spoke to me in a thin, quavering voice.
Mister, for heaven's sake, get me out of here.
Now, look here, my man.
Don't say you won't help, Governor. Ain't you got naught? Please help me, Governor. Take me out of here. Strike your pink on the bomb, I tell you.
Oh, what must you expect if you indulge in this filthy habit?
Take me out of here, Governor. I'll go straight this time. Cross me out, I will.
Oh, very well. Come along with me. I suppose it's my duty to help you.
Ah, bless you, Governor.
Here you are. Here. Now, give me your arm.
You cannot take him away. He owe me money.
That's a bleeding lie. I paid him when I come in, I did.
He cannot go with you, mister.
You remember what I said about my revolver, you blackguard? If I have any more trouble with you, I'll fetch the police. Come along.
He owe me money. He owe me money.
Infernal scoundrel, owe me money.
Tell him all proper, Governor. Not off you didn't.
Now, look here, my good man. I'll give you a square meal, some advice, and some medical attention. But the rest...
Never mind the advice, Watson, but I'll take you up on that square meal.
Holmes.
Yes, I'm very glad to see you, old fellow. What brought you to that filthy den of iniquity?
Oh, gracious me, I want to find a friend.
And I, an enemy.
Your disguise is wonderful. It completely fooled me.
But I'm afraid the proprietor was beginning to penetrate it. That's why I staged the little rescue scene. Had I been recognized, my life wouldn't have been worth an hour's purchase.
Well, how long had you been there? Why were you there? Come on, Holmes. Tell me all about it.
With pleasure, old chap. But first, let's find a chop house. I want that square meal you promised me. An excellent meal, Watson.
Yes, you're surprisingly good for such a shoddy-looking place. Well, Holmes, now perhaps you'll tell me what you were doing in that opium den. I've already told you my story.
I'm shadowing a most unusual criminal. A man who haunts the opium dens. Yet I know that he himself is not an addict.
Well, I don't see anything very criminal about that. He might be looking for a thrill, or perhaps he's one of those writer fellows or something.
But this man pretends to be an addict. I've watched him closely. He fakes his smoking, and grease paint has enabled him to simulate the characteristic pallor of a drug victim. He even affects the typical mannerism of nose-scratching, but it's his eyes that give him away.
The pupils are wide open, I suppose.
Exactly, old fellow. Whereas, if he were really addicted to the drug, they would, as you know, be contracted. I myself always treat my eyes with a special kind of drop on the occasion when I have to enter these dens.
Well, why does a man haunt an opium den in order not to smoke?
That, my dear Watson, is the problem that I intend to solve.
Well, perhaps the fellow's a policeman or a private detective like yourself, Holmes.
I've already checked on those possibilities. No, Watson, I believe there is only one answer. I believe the man is planning a murder.
A murder?
It's a tempting setting for a murder. Your victim is an addict, drugged and helpless. Your witnesses are in an equal state of befuddlement. The proprietor is anxious to cover up the crime because of the police.
That you? Yes, Holmes.
Now, the question is, who is the intended victim? That, my dear Watson, is why I've been shadowing this man. Unfortunately, he was not present in the den we just left, but I intend to continue my search.
Holmes, can I help you? My wife's away now. You know, it's a long time since we were on a case.
I should be delighted, my dear chap. I've missed you sadly during the past few months.
And are you, Holmes? What's the next move?
Back to Baker Street, old fellow. My disguise is wearing thin, and I must contrive a new one. New disguise, eh? Well, which one shall it be, Watson?
Well, how about the old flower fellow? I love that one.
Well, it's pretty fresh, Barney. Oh, no, my dear fellow, no. Hardly appropriate for an opium den. In any case, the clothes are so wretchedly uncomfortable.
Well, how about the music hall singer?
Oh, that chap, yes. Oh, I don't want to be beside the seaside. I don't want to be beside the sea. I don't want to stroll along the prom, where the brass band plays tiddly-um. Oh, confound it. Who can that be?
You weren't expecting anyone, were you?
No.
Well, this is just like the old days. The doorbell ringing, Mrs. Hudson toddling off and bringing up some poor devil in trouble and...
Say that rather wistfully, old fellow. Don't tell me that you repent of marriage.
No, of course not, Holmes. Mary's a perfect darling, and I couldn't be happier. Just the same. It is rather fun to be back here again.
Come in. Yes, Mrs. Hudson?
It's a gentleman, sir. He gave me this card. Says he's very anxious to see you.
Wayne J. Leyton, President, Leyton Corporation, Chicago, United States. Ask him to come up, will you, Mrs. Hudson?
Aye, sir. Well, it's quite the cold times to see you back here, Dr. Watson.
Just what I was saying myself, Mrs. Hudson.
Mr. Leyton has scribbled a message on the back of this card. If £1,000 for a week's work interests you, you'll see me.
£1,000?
Big fish, Watson. Very big fish.
This way, sir.
Thank you.
Oh. How do you do, Mr. Leyton?
I guess you're Sherlock Holmes.
You guessed correctly, sir. Excuse me. Oh, Mrs. Hudson. Just a moment, Mrs. Hudson.
Aye, Mr. Holmes.
Sit down, won't you, Slayton? My name's Watson, Dr. Watson. I'm Sherlock Holmes' colleague.
Yes, I've heard about you, too. Like a cigar, Doctor? It's a good one. Send me back 3 shillings.
Oh, 3 shillings? Oh, thank you. That's very nice. It's a good one. Oh,
No, I think you did yourself. Splendid. And now, Mr. Leyton, may I ask what brings you here?
I'll talk fast and to the point. I'm a businessman. I like to do things in a business way. I have a chance to control the guano deposits of the Republic of San Pedro. Their minister will be in London tomorrow, and if it weren't for one thing, I know that I could swing the deal and get the concession.
And what is that one thing, Mr. Leyton?
The deal is secret, see? I thought no one knew about it, but when I got here, I found out that my biggest business rival has gotten wind of what's going on. He's an Englishman. I've never met him, but he's right here in London. Now, I'm not going to tell you his name, not until you give me your word that you'll work for me.
Just what you wish me to do, Mr. Leyton.
Get this rival of mine and keep him out of circulation for a week. I don't care how you do it, and I won't ask. In a week's time, I'll give you the other half of this £500 I brought with me.
Oh, good Scott, what kind of
Watson,
detective
give Mr. Leyton his hat and gloves. That's it. Thanks, old fellow. Goodbye, sir.
What are you doing, throwing me out?
I can't think where you gathered the impression that I indulged in kidnapping. Once again, goodbye, sir.
And here, sir, you can take back your cigar.
Well, if you don't want some easy money, I'll soon find someone else that does. This is the last you'll see of me, Mr. Holmes.
Life is full of little consolations.
Some people seem to think that money can buy...
The king's afoot. Mr. Leyton is the man I've been seeking. The man who pretends to be an opium smoker.
Why in blazes you let him get away? Here, I'll go after him.
No. Don't worry. I've already arranged for that.
Oh, how?
When I left the room just now to talk to Mrs. Hudson, I was intending to tell her to summon some of my band of street urchins. You know, the Baker Street Irregulars. When she informed me that half a dozen of them were in the kitchen at this very moment, partaking of one of her incomparable steak and kidney pies. The rest should be obvious.
You left instructions for one of them to shadow Mr. Leyton when he left here.
Elementary, my dear Watson.
Oh, don't tell me that Leyton back again.
No, I think not. I should say that at the moment he's just about to walk out of the front door. No, I think we shall have another visitor. And judging by the commotion, the incoming and the outgoing visitors know each other and are not on the best of terms.
Well, sounds to me as if we're having a fight.
Here comes Mrs. Hudson to tell us about it. Come in.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, you've got another visitor.
So I gathered. Mrs. Hudson, you gave my instructions to one of the boys?
I did that, sir. Young Wiggins was going to follow the gentleman.
Mrs. Hudson, what was all that commotion about downstairs just now?
Oh, it was the 2 gentlemen shouting at each other. Him that was leaving and the one that was waiting on the doorstep.
Who is our new visitor, Mrs. Hudson?
Here's his card, sir.
Oh, thank you. Linton Chumley, 9 Belgrave Square. Well, ask him to come up, will you, Mrs. Hudson?
Very well, Mr. Holmes.
Oh, one thing more.
Yes, sir.
Please instruct another of the Baker Street Irregulars to follow this Linton Chumley when he leaves here and report to me.
All right, sir.
You're taking no chances, Holmes, huh? You're having this fellow shadowed, too.
Leyton is a potential murderer. Of that I'm convinced. This Mr. Chumley might possibly be his intended victim. While we're talking to him, Watson, old fellow, I want you to be sure to look at the condition of his eyes.
I certainly will.
Come in. Oh, good evening, Mr. Chumley.
Are you Mr. Sherlock Holmes?
I am. This is my colleague, Dr. Watson.
How do you do, sir?
That was Wayne Leyton that was just left here, wasn't it?
Won't you sit down, sir?
Thank you. I don't want to sit down. All right, you needn't answer my question, but I know it was Leyton. I've never met him, but I've seen his picture in the newspapers.
Oh, very well then, sir. It was Wayne Leyton.
I know why he came to you. He's trying to have me put out of the way while he closes that deal on the San Pedro and Guana concession. Now, look here, Holmes. You've got to be on my side. Whatever fee he offered you to dispose of me, I'll double it if you'll take care of him for a few days.
Oh, dear me, this is becoming monotonous. Watson?
The hat and gloves?
Thank you, old chap. That's right. Good night, Mr. Chumley.
Look here, Holmes. I'll treble his fee. I'll quadruple it.
My dear Mr. Chumley, I have accepted no fee from Mr. Leyton. I don't propose to accept one from you. Your hat and gloves, sir?
That man is out to kill me, Holmes. Well, if you won't help me, I'll go to the police.
That's an excellent idea, Mr. Chumley. Again, good night. Did you notice his eyes, Watson?
Yes, the pupils were contracted. He's obviously an opium addict.
And also a potential corpse.
What do we do now? Wait for the irregulars to report?
No, you'll return home for your medical bag. I have a feeling that you'll need it before the night is out. Then come back here. If I've gone before you return, I'll send one of the irregulars to bring you to wherever I may be. Wait until you receive a message from me. On your way, old chap. There's work ahead of us.
Wiggins, you're certain that this is the place that Mr. Holmes told you to bring me to?
Oh, yes, Dr. Watson. The corner of Swanham Line and Brixton Street, Mr. Holmes said.
Yeah, well, this is the spot, all right. I don't see any sign of him. Hello? This old woman coming towards us. So that's the disguise he chose.
Oh, spare me a few coppers, will you, mister? My feet hurt something awful, and I ain't had a bite of food all day.
No, you don't, Holmes. You can't fool me this time. As a matter of fact, your makeup isn't very convincing. You hardly look like a woman, and nobody's nose could be quite as red as that.
Don't look like a woman, don't I? Your nose is too red, is it? I'll take that.
No, steady, look
Might
here.
seem funny, but poor old woman who's poison me.
I'm sorry, madam. I didn't mean to insult you.
Well, matey, she gave you a bit of what for, all right, didn't she? Boxed your ears. No mistake about it.
You mind your own business. And anyhow, why aren't you aboard your ship at this time of night?
Because I'm not a sailor, Watson.
It's Mr. Holmes.
Great heavens, Holmes. I wish you wouldn't confuse me like this. I'd never recognized you.
My dear Watson, when you're able to recognize me, it will indeed be the beginning of the end. When your eagle eye penetrates my disguise, I shall realize that my retirement is imminent. But enough of this. See that house opposite?
You mean the ramshackle place with the broken tiled roof?
Yes, I gave the irregulars instructions to let me know at once if our two quarries ever enter the same house at the one time. They're inside there now, and I'm going in after them.
Be careful, Holmes. I better come along with you.
Can't I come too, Mr. Holmes?
No, certainly not. We'll keep watch outside. If I need any help, I'll smash one of the windows, and then you can come in after me. Wait here for me. I don't expect I'll be very long.
I'll be here, Holmes. Don't worry about me. Just take good care of yourself.
It's 1 o'clock, Doctor.
Yes, I know, Wiggins. He's been in there half an hour. I'm beginning to get worried.
Start going off.
No, Wiggins. You know Mr. Holmes. When he gives orders, he likes them. There's a signal for help. Keep watching the house, Wiggins. I'll be out in 5 minutes. Go for the police.
Right you are, sir.
All right, Holmes, all right. I'm coming.
You have searched my house from basement to attic. Why do you not give up? I tell you again, there has been no one here tonight.
But my friend came in here half an hour ago. I saw him, and before that, 2 other men are known to have come in here.
If that is so, then where are they? 3 men cannot vanish.
That's just the point, you scoundrel. Out of the way. I'm going to search this hovel again. I'm not leaving here until I find Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
You'll hear the rest of Dr. Watson's story in just a second. And if you don't mind, I'll take that second to say just one word to the ladies. And that word is muscatel. Petri California Muscatel. I want you women to know about it because Petri Muscatel is one wine that practically every woman likes. Maybe because it's such a beautiful color, like pale gold. But I guess really because Petri Muscatel brings you the wonderful flavor of luscious, sun-ripened Muscat grapes. And that's a flavor. Try Petri Muscatel after dinner, or any time as a change from Petri Port. Remember, if it's a Petri wine, you know it's a good wine. And now back to Dr. Watson and tonight's story, The Eyes of Mr. Leyton. Well, what happened next, Doctor? When you searched the house for the second time, did you find any trace of Sherlock Holmes or the two rival businessmen?
No, Mr. Bartell, I'm afraid I didn't.
What did you do?
I told Wiggins to report the matter to the nearest police station and then rattle back to Baker Street in a hansom cab as fast as I could. When I arrived at the old familiar doorstep, I wrenched at the bell in a frenzy of anxiety. Finally, the door opened, and there stood Mrs. Hudson.
Dr. Watson, what is it, sir? Why, you're as white as a ghost.
Mr. Holmes, is he here?
Aye, sir, came in half an hour ago. He was dressed as a sailor and was half carrying some drunken friend of his.
Oh, thank heavens he's safe. I'll go up.
All right, sir.
Now, what's no, chap? There you are.
Holmes, I can't tell you how glad I am to see you. Who's that lying on the sofa?
Well, up with your back, Watson. Oh, I'm afraid the poor devil's done for.
Great Scott, it's Wayne Leyton, the American fella.
With a knife wound between his ribs. See what you can do for him, will you?
All right. This is extraordinary, Holmes. You said that Leyton was a potential murderer, and now he's the victim himself.
The biter bit, eh, old chap?
Yes, he's still breathing. He hasn't a chance. I'll try him with an injection of strychnine. Holmes, how did you get his body out of the house? I searched the place from top to bottom. I found no trace of any of you.
When I went in, I found the stabbing had already taken place. The proprietor then bribed me, or rather the broke-down sailor he took me for, to smuggle the body out through the secret stairway leading to the wards at the back of the house.
Oh, no trace of Chumley there?
No, he must have left before me by the same exit.
Then you smashed the window and bolted.
Yes, I knew that I could count on you to hold the fort while I was getting the body away. Try to say something, Watson.
Yes, the injection's beginning to take effect.
Yes, Mr. Leyton? What are you trying to say?
Tell us, who stabbed you, sir?
Lips are moving.
Mandalay. He's dead, Holmes.
Yes, but he gave us the clue to the murderer's identity.
How?
And the word he mumbled just before he died.
It sounded to me as if he said Mandalay.
Precisely, old fellow. Never did a corpse give us a clearer instruction to our next and final move.
And that is?
Back to Limehouse, Watson. Back to Limehouse. Here we are. Listen to the place.
What's this? Another opium den?
Yes, I knew that since Chumley refrained from smoking earlier on in the night, in order to keep his faculties alert for murder, that an enormous reaction would set in. That kind of den, at once, and beyond question a different one from that in which the murder was committed.
But how do you know that he's inside here?
Just before you returned to Baker Street tonight, I had a message from one of my irregulars. He tracked him here after he escaped from the scene of the stabbing.
That was a couple of hours ago. He might have slipped away again.
No, Watson, tonight he came to drown his senses with a wretched drug. He'll be here. Come on.
That second injection of caffeine should bring him round. He's heavily drugged, but I think it'll work.
Surprising what a £5 note will do, isn't it?
Yes, the proprietor let us bring Chumley into his private room, and he's coming to.
Who are you? What do you want?
You remember me, sir? I'm Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, yes, I remember you.
You're in serious trouble, Mr. Chumley. Very serious trouble.
Trouble? What trouble?
Wayne Leyton didn't die.
Oh.
He's badly wounded, but he's going to live. He's at Baker Street now. He wants to go to the police and give evidence.
You've got to get me out of this, Holmes. I'll pay you anything. 10,000, 20,000.
Why did you stab Leyton?
He was in my way. I wanted the San Pedro confession. I meant to kill him. But we can fix it up now, can't we, Holmes? We can fix it up now.
Yes, we can fix it beautifully, sir.
As neat a murder confession as ever I listened to, Holmes.
Exactly. Come along, Mr. Chumley. I think some night air will be good for you. We'll take you for a nice drive to Scotland Yard.
Brought you decent kippers, gentlemen. You've both been up all night, and I'm sure you can do it.
That's very thoughtful of you, Mrs. Hudson.
Yes, indeed it is.
What is Mrs. Watson going to say when she finds you've been out all night?
Don't you worry about that, Mrs. Hudson. She's very understanding.
It's lucky for you that she is. Well, I'll go and leave you to your breakfast.
Holmes.
Yes, dear fellow?
There's only one thing that puzzles me about this case.
Oh, what's that?
When Leyton was dying, he muttered the word Mandalay. How did that give you the key to the murderer's identity?
Oh, the dead American had never met Mr. Chumley, you remember, except when they bumped into each other in our hallway.
Yes, he told us that he recognized him from the newspaper photograph.
And being an American, he had no reason to know that the name Chumley is in no way pronounced the way it is spelled.
Oh, Joe, I never thought of that. Chumley. That name's spelled C-H-O-L, Chol, M-O-N, Mon, D-E-D-L-E-Y. Chol Mondele. Mondele.
Precisely, fellow. What you thought to be Mandalay was really Charles Mondele, the name of the murderer.
What an amazing case. You did a remarkable job, Holmes. I'm beginning to be confoundedly sleepy.
Why not sleep, old chap? Your old room's all ready for you.
Are you going to take a nap?
Oh, dear me, no. I have much too busy a day ahead of me. Let me look at my engagement book. Baxter Square murder. I put the police on the track. The Duchess of Ferrers. Got her material. The princess who was about to run away from home. Good gracious me, let her run. The Pope's cameos. Ah, yes. His Holiness must not be kept waiting.
Can I help you again, Holmes? Mary doesn't return until tomorrow.
Well, I thought you were sleepy, old fellow.
Sleepy rubbish. I never felt more wide awake in my life.
That was a swell story, Doctor.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
And that was really funny when you mistook that old lady for Holmes and she slapped your face.
It wasn't very funny at all.
Sure it was. Come on, admit it, Doctor.
Well, she did look like Holmes in disguise, you know, and you would have made the same mistake that I did.
Okay.
Her nose was ridiculously red, and she did look like a man.
Look, Doctor, forget I ever said anything.
Huh?
I won't say another word. I'll keep my mouth closed forever.
Oh, come on, I wouldn't do that. Mr. Bartell? Mr. Bartell? Won't you even open your mouth to finish your wine? Your Petri wine?
Okay, you win. You know I'll open my mouth for Petri wine anytime. That Petri wine is always good wine. And for good reason, too. The Petri family has always owned and operated the Petri business. They've been making fine wines for 3 generations, since way back in the 1800s. That adds up to a lot of experience. Experience handed on down from father to son, from father to son. The Petri family really knows how to turn luscious California grapes into fragrant, delicious wine. And that's why, no matter what kind of wine you want, I'm sure you'll like it better if it's a Petri wine. Because Petri took time to bring you good wine. And now, Dr. Watson, what story are you going to tell us next week?
Well, now, next week, Mr. Bartell, I'm going to tell you a most unusual adventure that Holmes and I had in the heart of the English countryside. It concerns a corpse, a missing revolver, and a beautiful girl who was frightened of her own shadow.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure is written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and is based on an incident in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, The Man with the Twisted Lip. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station.
The Petri family took the time to bring you such good wine. So when you eat and when you cook, remember Petri wine.
To make good food taste better, remember...
Petri wine.
This is Harry Bartell saying good night for the Petri family. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studios. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
All right, folks, now that we've heard the episode, it is time for our highs and lows discussion around this episode. But first, let me introduce my special guest on this episode. We will start with no stranger to 221B. It is my brother, Jason, the Weasel Skull Alberich. Welcome back to 221B. Jason.
How'd you know it was me? I was wearing this clever disguise.
I just saw right there. I'm getting good.
Yeah, I guess it's time for me to retire.
Pat would have been duped if he was here.
Yes. Without Pat here to dupe, these disguises are useless.
Also joining us at 221B is another person who is no stranger to 221B. It is the host of LBC Irregulars, the Jeremy Brett series. It is captivating Kathy Bright, the MVP. Kathy, welcome. I have poured you a glass of Petri Muscatel. It's pale gold, and the women cannot resist it.
At least you can tell I'm a woman. I'm not, Sherlock Holmes dressed as a woman. So
that was maybe my favorite part. We'll get to it. Oh man, I just riffing off that mid-episode ad break, and it was aimed specifically at women this time, which I thought was great.
Absolutely.
Hey,
He's like, ladies, listen up.
We are not selling enough of this swill to these guys, to these fellas. We need you to pick it up.
Pick up that muscatel. It's pale gold and delicious.
So Kathy's gonna slum it with Basil Rathbone tonight. She can get away from her. From
absolutely
her usual Jeremy Brett. Cool.
Well, let's talk about Basil Rathbone, Nigel Bruce. Let's talk about the eyes of Mr. Leyton. Let's just get into it. Let's go clockwise, which means nothing to the listeners at home because they can't see what we are on the screen. But that means, Kathy, you get to go first with your thoughts. Hyla, what the? Which one's it going to be?
It's a high. Absolutely charming. I just re-listened to it. Well, since I got invited to be on the show kind of late, I was listening to it right before the show, actually recording. And I'm just still smiles. I was just so charmed and happy.
Just because of the old-timey radio, the whole thing of it?
A little bit of all of it. It was just, it's succinct storytelling, the chemistry with Nigel and Basil, or Basil, whichever way you say it. They just make me happy. I'm just in a good mood now, and like you, I know you love a good nostalgia.
I do.
And it definitely, I could see enjoying sitting around with the family on a Friday night listening to, this radio broadcast.
Yeah, it's weird because I can't have nostalgia for the 40s because I wasn't around, but I was listening to these on audio cassette in the late 80s and early 90s. So, it's funny that in our first round, Kathy just kind of likes the whole thing. We get that a lot from people who guest on the show, especially when this is, I think, your second appearance on the show. But,
correct.
People who haven't been here a ton are always charmed by the whimsy of the show, from the Petri wine guy to Watson intros to the mid-show breaks to the content. It's all good stuff. And
I feel like this one was a little more lighthearted than the first one I was on. I don't remember what episode it was, but
I don't either. But yeah, we'll definitely get into that, and let's pitch it to Jason in his round one to see what's on the top of his mind.
Well, I'll build on the nostalgia theme and the charmingness of it all, just to say, there's a lot of elements in this that I picked up on and enjoyed. One, from the storytelling that this is after Holmes and Watson have separated. Watson is now married, and he just happens to have some time, he's a bachelor again for a few days, and man, he doesn't want to sleep. He's just let's go solve some crime. He wants to party down with his boy, old school style, and just put a smile on my face. And, as they're going through and the banter that they're having with each other. And then there was also a little element of darkness to it too, because it alludes to Holmes's predilection for narcotics, right? And the surprise that Watson initially has, because he's going to rescue a friend of his. And he stumbles on Sherlock Holmes in a drug den, and he's like, again? No, I'm just kidding. But it's what are you doing here, Holmes? I tell you, I'm solving a case, but I'm really shooting up heroin. That explains itself, doesn't it? Isn't it?
That would be so disappointed.
Dr. Watson, Pat's in the corner, eating his cats and everything. No, but in all seriousness, it had that charm of Holmes and Watson coming together again, and it also touched lightly on Holmes' somewhat darker past and his descent into addiction, which I thought was an interesting and enjoyable blend.
Yeah. For almost every single one of these episodes, I've had to sit there and scratch my head about, because at the end they always say it's based on the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story of whatever. I'm like, they're making that up. There's no connection. This is the first one where I was like, this is exactly how The Man with the Twisted Lip starts.
Yes.
This is exactly how it starts. So I knew, I was just waiting for that part at the end where he says it's based on it. If he said anything but Man with a Twisted Lip, I was going to lose it.
Based off a Scandal in Bohemia. What?
What?
Well, that's why I got confused, because I read what the title, and I'm like, wait, this sounds like an episode we did on the Irregulars. And I'm looking it up, and I found the story. I was like, oh, it's the Twisted Lip one. And I'm looking, I was like, yeah, that's what it is. And I'm like, but wait, who's Mr. Leyton? I was so confused.
They really just borrowed the intro. And when I was listening to it, I was so proud of myself, because I was listening to the intro and I went, hey, this is, we've done this one. I did this one on Kathy's show, the Jeremy Brett one. I think it's Twisted Lip. And then when he said it at the end, I was like, yeah. And I went and looked it up, and I felt good because I actually remembered for once which one goes with which. Memory, not my strong suit, which means it's time to pass it to Katie. Get it? Because memory's not my strong suit. It's Kathy. Go. What you got in round two, Kathy?
I understand what Jason was saying about Watson's attitude, because that's Kathy when she goes to conventions. It's like, I don't want to sleep. I just want to, I'm here for 5 days. I want to pack it all in.
I can verify this wholeheartedly.
I've seen her set up. Yeah.
I just want to sleep. Work, sleep. Kathy's like the let's go bowling kind of person.
Kathy brings a crock pot so she can just throw some food in there at the beginning of the con and have something to eat.
This is not even a joke. Guys, literally true.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not a joke.
How else am I going to cook my SpaghettiOs like a real adult? I just want to keep talking about how I love the shade that Holmes provides to Watson in this episode. I don't want to step on Jared's toes, because I think he's going to mention this about when he is convinced that the woman who comes in is Holmes dressed up like a woman, and he's like, I know it's you. And there was a couple of other things I wrote down.
Ugly woman. The actual woman. I'm sorry, that was great.
And when he said, when you can recognize me through my disguises, it means my retirement is imminent. And it's like, he was throwing poor Watson under the bus the entire episode. So, and I'm a fan of Watson. So even this one.
Yeah, this is sort of the more bumbling, easily dupable Watson. Probably the most out of, well, I haven't seen every iteration of Holmes, but all the ones I've seen. I mean, I love Nigel Bruce and full respect to him. And he carried the character from the late 30s all the way into the late 40s. So God bless him, but he's not my favorite Watson. That's probably actually H. Marion Crawford from the 54 TV series.
Yeah, he's really good.
He's up there. He is up there. But yeah, Watson was a lot of fun in this one. And of course, Watson really carries almost the entirety of the radio show. You can tell that when they contracted the two guys from the movie series, Rathbone and Bruce, they really leaned on Watson more. Like he does the intros and the outros, and you can kind of tell that Rathbone kind of just shows up to do his lines and bails. And you can tell this is live. That's one of the best parts about it, is there'll be an occasional verbal stumble and they just keep going on.
Yeah.
And speaking of the intro and stuff, I love the subtlety of, you don't even notice the transition between Watson talking to the interviewer and then all of a sudden we're in the story.
Oh, they're smooth, man. The Petri wine's smooth. And I'm convinced that the Petri wine guy does occasional voices on the show. I think he was the voice of one of these two guys that was in the mystery. It was Leyton and Chumley, I think, were the two guys.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great place to pass it to Jason.
I liked when they're in 221B, and I forget which one comes first and which one comes second, but both of those guys show up like back to back, both to hire Holmes to apparently kidnap the other,
yeah. He's like, what business am I in?
I just want him to disappear, just, for a little while. And the first time Holmes I just love this, speaking of shade, I love the shade he just throws at that guy. He's like, well, apparently you seem to think that I'm in the business of kidnapping, sir, and I don't do that. Well, if you don't take this money, I'll just go find somebody who will. Well, life's full of consolations. Good luck.
Here's your hat. Here's your cane.
And then the second guy comes up and asks the same thing. And Holmes doesn't even talk to him. He's like, oh, Watson, can you just deal with it? And Watson just tosses them out. I love that. And I'm going to pull a Pat and sneak one in, too. This is one where I thought Nigel Bruce was a little bit H. Marion Crawford in this one, when he's out looking for his friend in the drug den, and the guy at the door is like, hey, you can't come in here. And Nigel Bruce is like, well, me and Mr. Smith and Wesson say I can.
Yeah, he was a little tough. Yeah, he was a little tougher.
This pistol says I can go anywhere I want.
I'm going to drag us down a little bit in round 2, just a little bit. The only thing that kind of bugged me a little bit about this episode is there's really no mystery at all. It's more of an adventure of Sherlock Holmes. There's 2 guys. One guy ended up dead. The other guy ended up being the guy who killed him. And it was kind of the
I think Lestrade could have figured this one out.
Yeah, I think he got a piece of puzzle. It was like the flimsiest thing where he was like, the guy said Mandalay, and if you spell it out, Chumley isn't spelled the way it sounds. It looks more like CH Mandalay. I was like, stop it.
I need Alan at this point.
Yeah. You stop. I mean, I get what they were doing. I got the pieces in my head, but I was still like, okay, it's not really a mystery. You didn't even need that clue. It was like, this guy hates this guy, and that guy hates him back, and one of them ended up dead.
So I'm thinking other guy?
Somehow they got a charming 20 or so minutes out of that, which I don't regret it at all. But like that was my only okay, it's I like it better when there's a handful of suspects. We the ones that leap out to my brain are the ones when I went to that apartment building where there was like 5 or 6 people. The one with the ghost in the armor where there was 4 or 5 people there. Those are the ones I like best, where you got to kind of keep track of all that in your mind because it's a radio show. Okay, we're about to close out, but it's a quiet night here at 221B, which is the 3 of us. So, Kathy, do you have any extra pat points that you want to get out about this episode?
Just that I talked about a little bit about how the charm of Watson, but I don't know if I specified the charm of Holmes in this one too, when he's deciding what costume he's going to wear and he starts singing that little song. I'm like, how adorable.
He loves to sing. He sang that little song. It might have been the same one or a similar one. I want to say in the second movie that they did. He did a whole undercover act that's sort of like one of those showmen, and it was a thing. And I swear that might have been the same song, but I need to double check on that before I speak with authority.
And I did make note of the use of the irregulars in this episode.
Yes.
Hence the name of our other podcast. So.
Well, it's this podcast. This is a Irregulars radio version.
That's true. True.
We're the spin-off show. Anything else, Jason, before we wrap it up?
Mrs. Hudson, she was kind of another character we haven't touched on yet. And she's charming as always. And man, she puts up with a lot of stuff, having to clean up dead bodies and out of 221B. And it's a hard life being the caretaker for Holmes and Watson.
Verified. Okay, so what that means is it's time to score this episode on our pipe scale. 1 means you hated it. 5 means you loved it. Figure out what happens in between on your own, folks. 1 to 5. Let's go to Kathy.
I am going to give it a 5. The utter charm and the giggles that I had and the giggles they had, like I said at the beginning, it just made me happy when I was done listening to it, and I will gladly go listen to it again.
They are fun just to put on a pair of headphones and listen to, go back in time. I get it. Jason, do you have the same love, or if you listen to too many of these and have it chipped away?
Too many. I'm jaded. I'm going to give it a 4. I agree with you. The mystery was a little bit lacking. It's probably one of the weaker mysteries, if I'm being totally honest, but the boys' night out element of it really added that level of fun. So it kind of pushed it up into that elite area for me.
And to no one's surprise, if this was Action Film Face Off, it would be Match Game. I also have it at a 4. I get why you've got the 5, Kathy. If this was my second one, I'd probably be very excited.
It was all heart. That's one of Jason's criteria. This one was all heart for me.
Yeah, I understand. But 4s and 5s, that's not bad at all. And that is it for this episode of LBC Irregulars, a Sherlock Holmes Podcast Radio Edition. I want to thank my guests, and let's find out where they can be found on those internets. We'll start with Kathleen.
I can be found on all social media at AUKathy2418, and that's Kathy with a K.
Jason.
You can find me at Jason Alberich on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook.
And I am at Yard Sale Artist on X, Facebook, and Instagram. And remember, you can leave us a voicemail with your thoughts at 707-532-5269. That's 707-532-LBOX.
Switch operator. Pick up the phone.
You want old school.
He did.
Old time.
What's another old school?
Give me Claritin 439. Anyways, use that number. Let's put your voice on the show. We'd love to hear from you. You can also comment the show using @LongBox Crusade on X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can also email us directly at contact@longboxcrusade.com. We'd love to feature your comments on the show. And as a reminder, we couldn't do the show and all the other shows on the LONGBOX CRUSADE Network without the support of the Crusaders Club members on Patreon. And you can join their ranks for as little as $1 a month at www.patreon.com/longboxcrusade. We will now thank our Crusaders Club members as we ride off in our handsome cab. Again, I've been your host, Jarrod Alberich, the Yard Sale Artist, and I look forward to joining you on our next episode.
Alan W. Wright.
And Helica Wolf.
Ooh. Auburn Elvis.
Bill Beer.
Billy D.
Bradley Dello.
Braxton Underwood.
That's Miguel Carey.
Quentin Robeson.
Captain Entropy.
Clark Westfield.
Dave Collins, Battlewagon.
Eric Hodges.
Eric Porter.
Ezra Gallo.
Gary V.
Gene Hendricks.
George Meal.
Gerald Green.
Heinz K.
Jason Keene.
Jason Lady.
Jeff Polier.
Jeremy L.
Jim Jarman. I hope you like Jim Jarman too.
Jim Meal.
Joe Man Conan.
Joe Thomas.
John Watson.
Josh Strickland.
Candace Ward.
This gal, Kathy Bright.
That's
MVP.
me. Woohoo.
Matt and Lizzie Passo.
Mark Ross.
Maxwell Traver.
Michael Minton.
Miranda W.
P.D. Devins.
Paul Hicks.
Rick from Jeff and Rick Present.
Ronald Easterday.
Rob Morgan.
Samantha Maney.
Sean Urbanski.
Spidey 67.
Spreadsheet.
Steve Cronin.
Tim Price.
Tony Pennington.
And Toronto Cop.